often have we heard of such severe turbulence on an aircraft that a passenger has been hurled to the roof?
बगल में मेरे पापा बैठे थे, वो पूरे उड़े हैं आसमान में और मैं उनको पकड़ी हूँ। उससे पहले वो आसमान का वो टच किया उन्होंने और वो नीचे गिरे और मतलब वहाँ पे जो अभी तक मैं सोच रही हूँ तो मेरे को कांपना होता है।
Take a look at the scenes inside the aircraft. This video was filmed by a passenger. This was Air India flight AI2379 and Airbus A320neo. It was flying from Phuket in Thailand to Delhi. The plane was cruising normally. Then it hit sudden, severe turbulence. Reports say it fell as much as 300 feet. 13 passengers and 4 crew members were injured. One crew member seriously.
Everybody, please fasten your seatbelt. This is emergency. Please fasten your seatbelt. Nobody should get up. Fasten your seatbelt.
The gravity of the situation is evident from the crew member's voice. So what caused this? Officials say it may have been clear air turbulence. This kind of turbulence has no clouds, no warning signs, and aircraft radar often cannot detect it. The seatbelt sign was off at the time. That's why so many people were caught off guard. The DGCA, that is India's aviation regulator, has launched a probe. It's studying weather data, flight recordings, and crew action. Severe turbulence isn't new. In May 2024, Singapore Airlines Flight SQ321 hit extreme turbulence over Myanmar. One passenger died, dozens were hurt. That incident pushed airlines worldwide to tell passengers, keep your seatbelt on even when the sign is off. Now, Air India itself has faced turbulence before. In 2018, a flight from Amritsar hit turbulence so strong a window panel broke loose. Just day before this latest incident, that is on the 30th of July, a window frame came loose on another Air India flight, that one from Delhi to Vadodara. Now, this comes at a hard time for Air India. In June 2025, that is last year, Air India flight AI171 crashed seconds after takeoff from Ahmedabad. 260 people died. It was one of India's worst air disasters in decades. That investigation is still going on. Parliament was recently told no defect was found on the plane's fuel control switches. Since then, every Air India incident, even minor ones, is being watched closely.
I got saved. We just had a crash. Oh, guys, the crash. He's saying it was just turbulence. But I don't know. Flights से तो उतर गए हैं. The staff was very nice. Thanks to Air India. सब उनको criticize कर रहे थे भाई, मुझे अच्छा नहीं लगा बिल्कुल भी. क्योंकि उनकी गलती नहीं है, वेदर बहुत खराब था.
Air India says it's fully cooperating with investigators. The airline characterized this particular incident as a brief turbulence-related occurrence rather than an uncontrolled loss of the aircraft. For now, the message to flyers is simple. Buckle up even when the seatbelt sign is off. Joining us to understand the why, what and what to do as flyers is Captain YN Sharma, aviation expert. Captain Sharma, welcome. In plain terms, what actually happened to AI2379? What do you understand from what you've read in the reports and especially the video footage that we have seen?
Very good afternoon to you. And I am responding to it only based on the reports which I've seen in the media. I'm not privy to any inside reports, but based on what one has seen and, in the video, and what one has read about it, it is a clear air turbulence which unfortunately the aircraft flew through. And as you were saying in your opening comment, that there is no device on the aircraft which would help the pilot foresee whether he's going to hit clear air turbulence, right? So, and during this particular time of the year when monsoon activity is there, the incidences of turbulence are more prevalent than normal because of the sudden updrafts in the air and downdrafts which are there. So it could happen. It's a very unfortunate thing that it has happened, and it's a phenomena which is there in airline flying, in any kind of aviation. That's why the advisory during it, particularly this time of the year, the advisory given by the pilot in his announcement is that even normally when they reach cruising altitude where they say that you can take the seatbelt off, they recommend that unless until you need to go to the washroom or something, please, while you're seated, keep your seatbelt on, because if you have a sudden incident like that, you are at least safely strapped in your seat. The injuries majorly happen only to passengers who are not strapped in, because that's a time when you get thrown and you impact against other the structures. It's either the roof or the front seat or anywhere else where it can cause injury to you, sometimes fatal or serious. So that advisory is there, but it's also an unfortunate fact that we tend to, and not just in India, worldwide, passengers tend to ignore it, because the feeling is that this happens to other people, not to us. So
Yes, I hope
unfortunately,
the message actually goes loud and clear that, keep your seatbelts on unless you're getting up possibly to go to the washroom, because otherwise there's no reason for you to really get up and walk around inside an aircraft. But in this particular case, as we heard from one of those passengers who was exiting the airport, he said that this shaking seemed to have lasted about 2 to 3 minutes. Does that seem too long? Does that suggest something to you, or is this normal?
not really. It just depends on the patch of turbulent air pocket which is there. It could last for 2 minutes. It could probably last for a little more also. Having said that, it's like, as I said, that especially during this time, if you fly, and moment the aircraft descends from cruising altitude and comes down to land and comes in the region of about anything up to 10,000-15,000 feet, that is where it's more prevalent, where you will find that the ride is a little bumpy. Normally, it's just a little bumpy, which, to the nervous passenger, it's a little uncomfortable. Majority of them just take it in their stride that, the little this thing, but all's good. So, it's just that sometimes it goes beyond the tolerance levels where, like in this case, that there's a sudden drop of 300 feet, which means like literally you've just fallen like a stone, and that is when you get thrown up from your seat, and an injury can be caused. So as I said earlier, unfortunate, but that's the way it is, that there is no way for a pilot to predict it. Yes, the pilots do have a system where, if you're coming in, hypothetically, let's say you're coming in on an approach to Delhi and your flight path is there, and on that, if you encounter any turbulence, you immediately radio to the ground control, and it's heard by the aircraft following you that there is a possibility that once you come into this area, there will be some turbulence. But that's just that's an advisory which will come from another pilot who has just a minute or two before has flown in that area, so he would tell you, and wherever possible, then the pilots try to avoid that. But beyond that, as I said, there is no equipment on board which can show you turbulence ahead of you.
I understand this point, but in this case, if most of the passengers, or let's assume nearly 100% of the passengers, were belted when the aircraft encountered this turbulence, would the injuries have been so serious? I mean, would they still have been thrown around a bit? They would have got injured, or is it mostly the injuries in this case are because many of them were not wearing their seatbelt at that time?
Definitely. If you're strapped in, then there is no movement and there is no possibility of your impacting anything. The injury happens only because when you're sitting loose, as in not tethered to anything, then you can go crashing into something which will cost you what is called impact injury, right? But if you're strapped in, then the possibility of that literally becomes zero.
So it's like wearing a seatbelt when you are sitting inside your car.
Definitely.
And in fact, I read somewhere another expert explaining that an aircraft encountering turbulence is something like a car, driving over a pothole, and there will be some jerking, but it's not something that you should be so worried about. Just make sure that you are wearing your seatbelt. Would that be something that you would agree with?
There's only one small rider to it. As a driver, I can probably see the pothole 50 meters ahead of me. Unfortunately, in clear turbulence, I don't see even that. So,
Right.
that is there. And again, the severity of it, as I said, that today any person flying normally would expect a little bit of a bumpy ride, which is normal, what they say, par for the course. It's only, episodes, incidences like this when the turbulence is so severe that it actually, goes beyond what you can say tolerable limits. That, if there's a slight bump, so you're sitting in a chair, you sort of just, move a little, but you don't really get thrown out of your chair. But if suddenly you drop 300 feet, or, there's an updraft and you're suddenly thrown up 300 feet, either way. So then there is a chance of injury. And, there have been cases where, a flight is in normal cruise. It can happen even at that height. And, you've got your food tray out, you've got your food in front of you, the
Yeah.
way we travel. Okay, a lot of people uh, have got their little haversacks or whatever, which are not in the overhead storage bin, but on their feet. So those are all, loose objects which are there in the cabin with you, which have a tendency to move around whenever there is a sudden movement, which
Yes.
can then impact a person and cause him injury.
Captain Sharma, often during these incidents, we speak mostly about the passengers, but we also must remember that there are crew members on board, other human beings as well. And in this particular case, it seems one cabin crew member has been badly hurt. Are crew members the most exposed in a turbulence event like this? Because they must have been going around even at the last minute, trying to make sure all the passengers strap themselves in.
Absolutely. In fact, this puts into focus, you find normally people trivialize the contribution and the effort which is put in by the cabin crew. This just highlights the fact that, the passengers normally have a seat on which they're seated for majority of the flight. As far as the flight attendants are concerned, except for the takeoff and landing, the rest of the time they're on their feet, making the passengers comfortable, getting them their food, their drinks, and, generally taking care of the cabin. So they are on their feet, which means they are untethered. So if at that stage suddenly if there is any turbulence, they have more of a risk of suffering any injury than the ones who are seated.
I understand. Also, just before you and I started this discussion, I happened to see an Instagram video posted by one of the passengers who showed some cracks on the roof of the aircraft. He seems to suggest that, or he seems to ask this question: how could a passenger's head hitting that ceiling have resulted in cracks on the roof? What does that suggest to you?
See, that's not the fuselage roof that we are talking about. We are talking about the cladding which is inside the shell. You have a metal shell, and then you've got various insulation and other stuff, and then you have the what we call a hard plastic cladding, which is there that you see, on the walls and on the roof. Even that is very, very sturdy normally, but if the impact is hard enough, end of the day, it's hard plastic. So even if there's a crack, it does not in any way compromise the safety of the aircraft operation.
Okay, okay. Because this seems to be a point of discussion, certainly on some of the social media sites. But, we remember the incident with the Singapore Airlines aircraft, I think just a couple of years ago, in which one passenger unfortunately died. Studies are now suggesting that severe turbulence is rising globally. Are airlines adapting fast enough?
All we can say is that, that yes, of course, when you realize that there are more instances of some kind, then you try to develop SOPs, or, try to develop procedures which sort of help you avoid those situations. Having said that, it is a widely accepted fact that due to global warming, due to the various things, there is a very significant change in weather pattern, wind conditions, in our atmosphere. And the airlines also try to adapt and adjust to it to the best way possible. But having said that, again, I reiterate the same point that clear air turbulence is Unfortunately, something on which it becomes very difficult for anybody to anticipate and take any kind of preventive action.
Right. From what you have read in the reports about this incident, from what passengers have said, what do you think of Air India's response? Because one passenger I heard was questioning why the pilot chose not to stop not to land rather at any of the other airports before Delhi, and had to wait. They had to wait till Delhi for medical attention.
See, the captain's call very simply, for him, it is very, very clear. Safety and the well being of the passenger comes first. If the pilot in command ascertains that there is a passenger on board who, due to a medical issue, it could be a heart attack or an injury, requires very immediate attention, he would divert to the nearest airfield and land. So in this case, maybe the captain's view was that whatever the injuries were, which was reported to him by the cabin crew, that's how it works. The head of cabin crew would have gone in and given a report on what the status is. Sometimes the captain would come out and ascertain for himself what the status is, leaving the co-pilot in charge for a little while. And then it's a call that the pilot in command takes. That is the situation dire enough for him to immediately divert and land at the nearest airfield possible, or would he proceed to what was his original destination plan, and how much time that would take? And they're informed people. It's not that the pilot in command has any instructions from anybody that regardless whatever, you just need to go straight up to the destination. That's not how it works.
Yes, ultimately I think he's in the hot seat and knows best what to do at that point. But if you were talking to your family members, imagine if somebody from your family was flying tomorrow and they had read about this incident, they were concerned about air turbulence. Is there any advice that you would give them, to your family and friends, that all of us must know as passengers?
Stay strapped. Stay strapped. And only remove your seatbelt if you need to go to the washroom or whatever. Otherwise, don't move around. Just stay in your seat, keep your seatbelt, and see that's the unfortunate part, that if you have your seatbelt on, it doesn't discomfort you in any way. It's just an attitudinal thing, that you'll find that moment the takeoff happens and the seatbelt sign is off, you find people literally ripping off the seatbelt as if it's been causing them any bother. It's so stupid. So it's it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And one would hope that people learn from these things and understand that this is for your own safety. That if you do that, you just make sure that, God forbid, if there is an incident and your aircraft does fly into turbulence, at least you have a reasonable safety, that you're not going to get thrown around, and you've substantially diminished chances of any injury happening to you because of your impacting any hard object.
I understand. Captain Sharma, thanks so much for joining us, because it gave us a lot of clarity on what exactly happened and what can we as flyers do. And also, when we are inside an aircraft, we have to trust the pilot. The pilot, he or she, is the best person to take a call and knows best what to do and how to respond to that situation at that point.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
And this is just the comment that you made about the passengers having a view on whether he should have landed or not, or this crack which is happening. Now that is what I call a layman. I don't blame them, because they're coming at it with whatever limited knowledge they have about the subject. Having said that, let me assure you that the aircrafts which are there now, they're very, very safely built. It's not that they just break up in the air. That does not happen. This is a freak case of, a clear air turbulence which has happened. Very unfortunate. Obviously, one wishes that this never happens, but that's life. Something like this which has happened. I don't think it's a reflection on the airline or on the pilot in any way possible.
Okay, that last line was important, not a reflection on the airline. I'm sure a lot of people would be having that doubt and that question. But thanks very much for speaking to us today. Let's just remind everyone, you're watching Axis Focus with me, Ananya Dasgupta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.